ni mzuri sana.
Kuhusu hizo bloody pictures, sometimes zinakuwa scary, sio watu wote wanapenda kuziona.
There's a blogger and a prison warder who are in custody over Wajir attack picture. Is this a question of freedom of expression under attack? Let's meet the panelists tonight. Right next to me is Kokio Cheng. She is a lecturer at the USIU Africa, lecturer of journalism and media studies, and has also contributed to Presspass several times. Next to her is Eric Odwor, the Secretary General at the Kenya Union of Journalists, as well as a sub-editor here at the Nation Media Group. And next to him is senior Hassan Kulundu, who is a media consultant, now has been a journalist, a practicing journalist in the newsrooms around the country, and even an editor, so has a lot to lend to this conversation tonight. We'll start with what has led across the board today and perhaps will dominate the headlines tomorrow in your favorite daily, and that is on the attempt on the deputy president, who may have kicked off a new storm after he alleged a plot to assassinate him. 4 cabinet secretaries, a number of principal secretaries and chief administrative secretaries from the Mount Kenya region said to be at the center of this scheme today answered summons to appear at the DCI to respond to these claims. The senior government officials, however, rubbished the allegations and accused the deputy president of an attempt to embarrass them. They say they will take appropriate action once investigations into the alleged plot are complete. NTV Setolale was at the DCI headquarters and filed this report.
Cabinet Secretary for Trade Peter Munya, his ICT counterpart Joe Musheru, CS for Health Cecily Kariuki, and her transport counterpart James Macharia, flanked by other senior government officials, mostly drawn from the Mount Kenya region, were questioned about an alleged plot to assassinate Deputy President William Ruto.
But they have confirmed to us that the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya made a call and complained.
It is alleged that the senior government officials, mostly drawn from Mount Kenya and the Central Kenya region, held a meeting on 14th May at Lamada Hotel. Top on the agenda, it is alleged, was to put together the details of the Deputy President's assassination.
There is freedom of association and the freedom of expression. People are allowed to meet as long as they are not meeting to plan any criminal activities.
The Deputy President allegedly told the DCI that the plot was part of a wider scheme to lock him out of the 2022 Kenyatta succession.
I think it's irresponsible, unfair, and it intended to portray us in a very bad light so that we look like criminals who meet to plot criminal activities against him. And it's also intended to injure our reputation.
The leaders say the meetings addressed concerns about development in the region, but the allegations seem to relate to an unverified letter dated the 30th May 2019 and circulated on social media, purporting to have been written by a cabinet secretary whose name was redacted. The letter, titled Matters of Grave Concern, contains details of a meeting held on a Tuesday this year, supposedly attended by CSS Peter Munya, Cecily Kariuki, James Macharia and Joseph Musheru, with the agenda listed as to show up support for the president in Mount Kenya, a proposed referendum, and going on an offensive against the DP. Interestingly, the CSS named in letter, whose authenticity has not yet been verified, are the very ones summoned by the DCI. The said meeting was held on the 14th of May, a Tuesday, and a date that also appears on the letter. The CSS, however, did not record any statements since the Deputy President has not filed a formal complaint. Investigations over the assassination plot are being undertaken by the Serious Crimes Unit as well as the Cyber Crimes Unit under the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. Detectives will question all persons of interest before submitting a detailed report to the Director of Criminal Investigations, George Kinoti. Seth Olale, NTV at the DCI headquarters, Kiambu Road.
It was important that we start with that story just to give context. It's something that broke today and was all over the other media houses. Just in case you weren't watching NTV and watching one of the others, you most probably saw a story that followed that same structure. It started with this particular letter with allegations that, you know, there was a meeting by these said cabinet secretaries who gave their responses. And I mean, it's very questionable in terms of who the source of this letter was, where it came from and what have you. Now, just start with the panel just to find out their feelings, initial first of all. And I'll start with you, Koki. Would you have given this as much attention as it's been given today? It's the leading story in all media houses.
Not really based on the letter, because we are in the era of knowing what fake news is all about.
Right.
And if you can't verify from where the letter is coming from, then I don't think it's a story. But then again, we're in the era of mediatization where the sources will play their game, create a narrative, and media will follow because they know how to entice media to pay attention to their stories.
Right.
On the allegation of threat to life, of course, that's a story. That's
Yes.
a big story. It has prominence.
No less to the DP.
Exactly. So I think that would be an interesting way. But I think due process is what the media would need to question. What is the due process if your life is threatened? Don't you file a report at the police station, have an OB number, go through the process? Instead of just talking about allegations, then it's not really something that is verifiable in that manner.
And I remember when I shared this with Eric, you said the first thing, at least questionable to you, is that there is no formal complaint to the target, the supposed target.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we've seen from the statement that was made by the cabinet secretaries when they appeared at the DCI offices here in Nairobi. Because they said that so far there has been no formal complaint that has been filed. It was just a phone call. So definitely that brings a lot of questions that can people be summoned on the basis of a phone call that has been made by a complainant. So we are hoping that probably to move this story forward tomorrow, we would be asking a lot of questions from DCI whether they have asked Deputy President William Ruto to go and file a formal complaint so that they're able to investigate this matter. Remember, in this country we've had a lot of stories of political assassination. So this is a story that cannot be treated lightly by the media. And
Yes.
we hope that now there are two offices here that actually can help this story move forward. That is the office of the Deputy President, who supposedly made a phone call. We are hoping that probably when he was making a phone call, he was very far away. He could not probably drive to the nearest police station to record a statement. He will be able to do that. And we are also hoping that the DCI will be able to tell us that finally we've been able to get hold of Deputy President to give us the details of the plot to assassinate him, because this is not a story that can be treated lightly. It's a story that cannot just end tomorrow by being on the headline.
Yes.
But at least we hope to know details of this story. Supposedly, I suppose there was assassination attempts, or there were discussions around that issue. Then again, we are also hoping that the media will be able to give us more details other than just not relying on the spin from the politician. Because right now, if you see what is going on there, is like we've got two camps now. So there's a camp that is being accused of plotting to block Deputy President William Ruto from ascending to power come 2022. Then we have got another group that actually is pushing for him to ascend to power when we go for elections in 2022. So this is a very sensitive issue that we hope will not just be followed based on the spins that we are seeing from political parties.
Yes, and to Bwana Kulundu, with the legal background that you have, at least what you've looked into, in terms of due process, has been mentioned by Koki here, in terms of an issue being reported and it being confirmed by one report here, this is Citizen, actually, their online version, and it leads as, yes, DP Ruto called over alleged assassination plot, says DCI Kinoti. Does this in any way count as a formal complaint?
In criminal law, that's not a formal complaint. Ideally, the complainant has to make a formal written statement, because a complaint includes being written,
yes,
and the statement entered into what we call an occurrence book. So without that, legally speaking, it's not a formal complaint as such. Nonetheless, let's go back to journalism. Koki started by saying that if you are the news manager, you will first of all try to verify,
yes,
the authenticity of that letter before you move the story. Now, I must say that journalists are not expected to verify things with issues with the mathematical precision. At least that precision is built for lawyers and prosecutors in court.
But isn't precision in the line of facts?
Yeah,
even facts. Even however scant it is, journalists have got that leeway to at least pick wherever it is. It's an allegation. In fact, that's why I think the people who reported it said alleged.
Yes.
So it's an allegation. So I would go with that story. First of all, the reason why I'll go with that story and even give it prominence as a news manager is because of the history of this country, with regard to what my colleague Erica Soit
yes,
talked about,
yes,
about the assassination or threat to the lives of prominent people in this country. In 1975, in fact, the media, national media group, in fact, really got embarrassed with the J.M. Kariuki story. While J.M. Kariuki's body was rotting and he was being eaten by hyenas in Ngong Forest, Nation was reporting that he was on a trip to Zambia. Okay? So in order to avoid that kind of embarrassment, you must pay attention to it. Secondly, we recently had the situation of, if you remember, 1990, Robert Oko's murder.
yes,
when he disappeared, it was announced on radio that wherever he is, if you can hear this announcement, let him report the nearest police station. A whole cabinet minister,
yes,
foreign affairs, saying that wherever he is, nobody could tell where he was. Only for him to turn up, his body to turn up at Gotalila. And up this moment, we have not solved that killing. So, because of that, when this kind of issue comes in, and I'm a news manager who has got a good history of what has happened in this country, I'll go that story, I'll pay attention to it, irrespective of how scanty or how doubtful the letter is.
Yeah. And there's something else, because and he's mentioned. Yeah, Eric, go
and
ahead.
I wanted to add to that. If you look at the political assassinations that Kulundu has talked about, all of them are actually, and even you add of Robert Ouk or of Tom Mboya, all of them were surrounded, because historians have come up to say that all of them actually were surrounded with the succession politics.
Yes.
So if you are talking about succession politics, these assassinations are also tied to succession politics. And we're also talking about succession politics when we are mentioning William Ruto here. So these are very serious and very sensitive issue.
Yes.
I think I mentioned that it's about, yes, paying attention to the allegation, not that I would believe the letter per se.
Okay.
I didn't say that you shouldn't pay attention to it, please. That's not what I said. What
Okay.
I meant was, in terms of course, there's a press conference, somebody's telling you something that you need to pay attention to, yes. But based on the letter that was presented there, I wouldn't probably think about it.
And while we are at it, and we know there's also politics at play in this story, not ignoring it, giving it the weight that it deserves, these are sentiments that are carried by many people, and it's something that has been in the public forum at play. Mutua Lloyd says, we need to be cautious about this Ruto assassination saga. We're being distracted from a huge scandal. A huge scandal is looming. Whilst this can't be proven, there is the instances where a spin or a story is put out there and it throws us in a whirl, where we get lost in that while something is happening in the background. Would you also, with that in mind, with the historical context in mind, be very careful with this particular story?
Certainly, I'll be very careful. First of all, I'll break the story, let it go the way things are. Then from there, we start to analyze the issues.
Yes.
And the skepticism that all journalists are trained in, the way Koki says, that's when it sets in later. So later on, this is what I'll do, I'll analyze the letter. First and foremost, even look at the context and ask myself, who is so stupid in this 21st century to plot an assassination under those circumstances? All right? That's the first thing. Then if you look at the letter, even the way it's authored, the way it's written,
yes,
the content, and what I can call the kind of its diction. It's not a letter you can say it was authored by a cabinet secretary addressing the chief executive of this country. So that's from there, that's when now we'll start doing what? poking holes in the authenticity of that letter as journalists. But for purpose of breaking the story, we'll go with it the way it is, cautiously, of course, but the exercising the skepticism that every journalist is trained to exercise during such issues.
But Mark, well, one thing I must also add to this is that whenever these documents are actually released, or somebody is trying to sneak this document outside an office where it was authored, journalists always know, because this letter does not just drop on the street.
Yes.
These people who are releasing this information, actually they always do that in consultation with journalists. They tell that, oh, you just wait, there is something we are going to release, you just wait for it. So by the time this document is being released, actually journalists actually already know where this letter is coming from, only that sometimes, given the ethics and legal implications, sometimes journalists don't actually reveal who was the author of these letters. But one thing I know is that when these letters are released, journalists actually are aware, because journalists are actually always on high alert.
Yes.
And these people also work with the journalists when they want to reveal some kind of
As a
information.
sub-editor, you would want to know, at least, they don't reveal the source,
Yeah.
but a journalist will come to you and say, I have something. And you would ask, who is the source? So by the time we're going with a story, perhaps we'll see it on Daily Nation tomorrow, or any other, the dailies, the Standard, Nairobi News, or the Star, beg your pardon, then you'd be able to verify that. There's
Exactly.
some checks.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying that when this story actually is being carried, that means that a proper process actually has been followed. And as an editor or a sub-editor, when the story is brought before me and I want to know the authenticity of the story and the document, journalists actually do reveal to their editors, so that even if the story that is published or aired does not have those details, but actually the editor who approved the story has all those details, who authored it, how was it released, so that in the event that there is a need for this story to be defended elsewhere, I think the editor who authorized this story actually has all the details.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
but I mean, we are in the era of fake news, and we know that. And we know that, like I said, sources can really manufacture stories that we can, fall prey to. So I think what the editor was saying here is that, yes, the skepticism must be there, and it must be more, more obvious, because we are not in the era of verifying who the letter is from. Look at the language, like he says, the diction. Is this the way government-style letters are written? Is this something that will just go out there, just like that for the sake of it? Maybe think back, when did this story begin? For me, this story began last week.
Yes.
I mean, just from the conversations you could see online.
Right.
So again, yes, we understand it's a grievous issue. It must be addressed. We must report it. But then again, when we go back to the verification and factification aspect of it, then we become a bit more diligent.
Would it be embarrassing? We wake up tomorrow, we find out this letter was nothing but a fake, and just see how easy it is to get the attention of the media and throw them in a spin?
Nothing embarrassing. First and foremost, we have had, we have just seen the DCI, a statement
Yes.
from an authentic person. Secondly, we have seen senior cabinet of ministers addressing us.
Yes.
Through using our own platforms. So there will be nothing embarrassing about that. The story was about that incident where they reported DCI.
Exactly.
That's the story for today.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the letter now, that's something will come later. Now that we shall pursue it later, because I don't think anybody who's reported about this story today has said with certainty that this is true. In fact, I want to believe the word allegation covers all those areas used in the reportage. But just to go back to what you said, why journalists will believe that maybe somebody wants to put the spanner into the works by first of all trying to look at the authenticity of that letter. You will find, first of all, look at the caption, what we call what you call the track, what you call the track as put on it. I would expect such a letter to have the track called confidential, not urgent.
Yeah. That's just government.
Yeah, so
language.
with experience in journalism and people who have dealt with the government documents as part of as journalists, we'll begin now poking holes. I would expect that one to have been tracked as a confidential and not urgent.
Yeah.
Right. And there's something about the urgency, and we're in an age, as much as we're in the age of fake news, there's also the question of urgency, and I mentioned it to you, Eric, where I was actually in the line of accusations and criticism that we were not that quick to break this particular story. Is that a concern for you as a sub-editor? What do we need to put in check? Because we've had a lot of legal action taken against us. And as you see the allegations and accusations against these CSs, they could rake in a lot. And it kind of slows us down in reporting such.
Yes, exactly, and that's what I was saying, that if you look at the kind of reporters and editors we have, these are the people who have got the capacity to handle some of these things, so that by the time this story is actually getting to the newsroom, it means that the process of verification and facts checking actually begin from the source of the story.
And you're saying by the time we got it, and we had this, I mean, most of the newsrooms had this early in the morning or even before. We've been following
exactly
this.
So that I'm saying that once you get it, the facts checking actually starts from the beginning. So by the time it goes to the editor, that's where now the editor will sometimes stop the story, say that, okay, fine, we have this story, we have everything. So what we do, let us do due diligence before we release the story. So that it means that by the time the story, all this document actually go into the hands of journalists, the process of verification began from there.
Yes.
But up to the time that our story is written. So I believe that by the time all these things were happening, the story was ready. What was going on was just verification and also checking with the legal team, so that when the story is actually released, it does not have a lot of it doesn't cause a lot of problems. But I know that the story is usually ready. So what remains is just verification and authentication to authenticate the document, and then therefore the story is released.
All right. And what's more heavier for you, that we break it or we verify it? What for you will outlast the other?
I think if it's a grievous matter like this, there's that, between a hard rock and a hard place, because you're like, we need to break it, but then again, we need to verify. And at the end of the day, there are so many challenges in verification. But then journalism is about gatekeeping. And gatekeeping is about making sure you have the facts and you verify them.
Right.
So I think when you want to think about telling a story and making sure that it's real, it's the truth, your side of the truth, his side of the truth. There are those processes we understand through our news values and code of conduct that will guide us on how well or how we work on a story so that it gives a reflection of reality.
But you see, Mark, the dilemma that we had as journalists when this story actually broke was that at that time, even up to now, it's the question that we're still asking: what was the formal complaint? Was there a formal complaint with the DCI, which up to now we still don't have? And I think that's the question that we are still grappling from the beginning. So I don't believe that there was wrong decisions that were made by media houses, because even up to now, we still do not have that formal complaint being filed with the DCI. And that was the question that actually people started asking from the morning. Up to now, that question has not been answered. But actually, we got a lease of life when we saw these cabinet secretaries appearing at DCI to record statements. So actually, it now allowed journalists actually to get somewhere or something that they can anchor the story on as they pursue the remaining facts that have not been checked.
Okay. Yes. Real quick.
Mark, as we pursue this issue, we must remember. Let's go back to the news we had yesterday.
Yes.
As we speak, there's a former MCA from West Pokot whose body was found killed, dumped somewhere, mutilated, and what looks like an assassination or an elimination. Then we must not forget that in that particular report, the victim was an assistant to Honorable Senator Murkomen. And Mr. Murkomen appeared on TV saying that if DCI or whoever has the concerned authorities will not have said something concerning that in 24 hours, he will spill the beans, so to speak. So it's hardly 24 hours before that we are hearing this. Now,
even last week, I think there was a CEC who was assassinated in Homa Bay.
Likewise, in Homa Bay. Yes. Now, these are some of the issues that, because I remember you asked a question: is that somebody want to put a spin? Is why would want somebody to gain prominence in the media? So I think the long-lasting issue after the waters the storms have cooled down, the story will be this: if at all these particular letters are forgery, the question will be this: who actually brought it in the media, and what intentions did they have? That will be the issue now.
Okay. And we'll lay this story to rest when we come back from the break. But someone here says, Alvin Mabea, you say a threat to the life of a leader does not need to be reported for it to be investigated. Better safe than sorry. Basically saying that this is not something that we would or should ignore. And people are saying where there's smoke, there is fire. So we're not being alarmist, not being sensationalist, but we're also looking at the context that govern or that guide our decisions as journalists and different newsrooms in the country. Stay with us. I'm back shortly. Well, here's something to respond to as we follow on with the conversation. This is Gazara, a contributor to this show. He says, it's not about a spin. It's a crime to make a false report to the police. So I imagine Kenya media will be asking the DCI what happens if it turns out that William Ruto is telling fibs. It's not like he enjoys any immunity from prosecution, is it? And Elijah, he responded, Gadara, why assume to the contrary? DP Ruto has never shied away from calling a spade a spade. His life is as important as mine. If it were me, the same steps could be undertaken. So from here, moving forward, we've reported it. There's that question of we don't have a formal complaint. Who do we call tomorrow as journalists or as newsrooms? Is it DP's office to call them and ask them, is there a formal complaint? Are you pursuing this? Or is it Kinoti? But Kinoti seems to have spoken to some journalists and already confirmed that they were in communication with the DP.
Certainly, all people concerned, you can still call them to verify the story.
Okay.
You can still pursue DCI, because if you say that the matter is under investigation,
yes,
it means investigation means you are unearthing new information each coming day. So it would be proper for him to call him so that he can tell you what is new since the time the issue started.
Yes.
You can call the Deputy President William Ruto to ask him, did he make the call? Because I do remember that at one point, I think in one of the reportage, I heard somebody say that the DP, somebody from his office,
yes,
has said that actually the DP did not make that call to Kinoti.
Yes.
So it means it's Kinoti's word against the DP. So we have to call the DP to ask him, did you really make that call?
Yes.
All right. Then you'll have to call more people. The ones who have appeared today, saying that they had been summoned at DCI to answer to some questions. Still call them to get more information about this. Why? Because we already know from themselves that there was a meeting at some hotel. Is it possible to have any other person beyond them who can corroborate or say something different or add something to that particular meeting? I don't think the meeting was only between among the four have been called.
Yes. Yes.
Which means that it's quite a big team which met there. So who are the people who are there?
Yes.
If it would be possible, and it should be, I've seen, we should be able to call the president, if possible, if he can actually respond. Did you sanction any meeting as alleged in the letter that we have? the president can speak for himself. He's a newsmaker, and he is, from the story, he has been roped into it. Just the way one time we had the issue of the gold, the Qatari or Emirati gold. The president was roped in, and the former prime minister was also roped in. He came out and spoke. So it's good for journalists to keep on probing what really happened. Is the president aware of this? That's what journalism is all about.
Okay. So pushing those names, interested parties, and the accused who were involved, what would your course of action be?
Yes, I agree that we need to do a story like inside Lamada Hotel, so that people can get to know whether this meeting, yes, like Munya said, that they have got freedom of association. So we need to find out what actually really happened. This meeting that took place at Lamada Hotel, what was discussed there? That aspect of the story that must also be told, whether they discussed assassination as been alleged, or they were discussing the development issues or complaints as also have been explained by politicians concerned. Number two, I think the first call of action tomorrow should be the DP's office or DP himself, so that he's able to come out very clearly and say yes, because we know, like the viewer has said, that Ruto calls a spade. So let him come and tell us, yes, I made this call, and these are the details of the meeting that took place, and this is what we discussed as far as assassination allegations are concerned. So he's able to explain more about this. Then after that, we can also go and also ask the police, or now the DCI, to tell us that, okay, fine, now it's 2 days or 1 day after these people appeared before you. Are you still going to summon them? Or is there any new information that actually you have that you will also be willing to share? Then what will happen, so that we also get to know what will happen? Are you going to charge these politicians if you are satisfied that the allegations that were made are true? Those are some of the things that the public will want to know, so that at least we put this matter to rest. Because assassination is not a small matter. It's a very serious issue, because looking at our history, or the history of this country, we've had such cases, and people have been assassinated. Politicians, senior politicians have lost their lives in such circumstances. So therefore, it's not a matter that can be treated lightly.
Yes, and
Mark,
just
to add on that, the most important thing why the media should pursue this thing to its logical conclusion in a very good way, because these allegations have raised something very serious, which can have far-reaching ramifications for this country.
Yes.
Look at the people who have been mentioned, met, all right? All of them have got a common denominator. They come from the Mount Kenya region. And look at the person who is allegedly the target of that meeting. Then you know the history of this country with regard to that ethnic or regional composition. And when there's something, we must ensure that this issue does not escalate, because the common person down there will just take the way it is from the media, and then do what? Certain actions can take place. This country can
actually burn, to be honest. But that's the other thing, our responsibility not to spread unnecessary fear as this story is being, as it's developing, I want to say, as it's being spun. Because even in this alleged letter that started this particular story, there's a mention of the late former Vice President George Saitoti. You know what happened with that. And someone reads this, a layman reads this, and they might feel, our man is being targeted. So how do we play this safe and not play into this, some form of fear being created?
Now, when we read history in Kenya, or when we think about events, there's normally what we call historic memory, and that is always triggered. I was reading something about evolution, and I was reading how it ended in 1974, how it changed the narrative to Majimboism and blah, blah, blah. So there's always that historical memory. And that historical memory always brings out the idea of people being kind of insubordinated, or kind of, demeaned, or, brings up raw memories that people don't want to remember often, and of course can trigger what we are saying, the violence that we're looking at. But the media has the responsibility to keep the story alive, and not just alive, to give it even other perspectives, to make it grow. As you are going to the conclusion, you give us other perspectives, so that we can keep us interested in what it is.
Yes.
You're struggling with the what you call attention economy where, I mean, people are all over the place thinking about, but you need to put it into their minds so that they pay attention to it till the end, and we get to the bottom of the issue, because like we said, the person who is being targeted is a senior person, is a prominent person, and of course everybody wants to safeguard their interests in the country.
One more thing, Mark.
Sure, and then Eric,
And,
I think
that's why we need to caution media, and especially we media managers, the people who say that we are the gatekeepers, especially editors.
Yes.
We're the gatekeepers, because we decide what goes in and what does not go in. And it looks like history is repeating itself. The other time when when the president was in a meeting somewhere, where he spoke in mother tongue and dashed out.
Yes.
Now, you saw the headline. One of the headlines was, "I will crush you." A furious Uhuru tells some renegade MPs, and apparently it looks like
another headline.
Yeah, that there was a similar headline around 1966 when "I will crush you." A furious Mzee Kenyatta tells KPU.
Yes.
Now you see, you can see that certain things are moving somebody somewhere or somehow.
Yes.
We are repeating, and those are some of the seeds of discord that were planted in this country, so that certain communities became hostile to one another.
Yes.
And you can see that the headlines then and the headlines now are almost similar, and the common denominator here is that there was a Kenyatta involved.
Yes.
Then the other challenge is that...
But is that conspiracy, or is that maybe fact?
The other challenge is that, you see, even if editors would like to control the narrative, there's this social media space that seems to be also captured.
Yes.
Captured by these people who spin ideas and who are propagandists, and they are not like identifiable, like, you know, maybe Alai or you know, Nyakundi. No, they are undercover, and and I don't want to say that it's a reality, but people can, you know, take advantage of that. And because media is not autonomously the voice of concern about what society is, yet trusted, you find that social media might spin a story to a certain direction. And the media might take that lead too. And in the process, of course, it becomes damning.
Right. But I don't agree with that, because if you were to go by that direction, then Kenyans will be fighting right now. Because if you go to social media and read it, you'll actually come to a conclusion that Kenyans are killing each other. Because if you look at this propaganda, the spin, rumors, lies that actually are spread on social media right now, you'll think like Kenyans are actually attacking each other every day. But the legacy media plays a very critical role here, because if the media actually remains objective and accurate in its reporting, I don't think the reporting on social media can cause that kind of animosity that my colleague here is talking about.
But
because right now, if you've been on social media, even if, let's say, like when we had elections last two years ago, you could see the bodies were all over on social media, people claiming that these people were killed, but I didn't see anywhere where Kenyans attacked each other because of the bodies that were being shown on social media, yet those bodies actually were picked from some other countries. So long as media, the traditional media actually remains accurate and objective and is able to lead this discussion, I think that can also take away the misinformation and rumors that are actually on social media.
But there's a force that you can't ignore.
That he accepts that there's misinformation and rumors is exactly what I'm saying.
That needs to be countered.
Yes, and sometimes the media might take it up, maybe in the process of, you know, needing to break the story or needing to be with it. Let me say the word is with it. And in the process, of course, pick up ideas that are not necessarily consistent, ideas that are not necessarily verifiable, ideas that are not facts. And in the process, of course, lose the gist of why they're reporting. Not that I'm saying that it is, you know, a practice, but generally there's a symbiotic relationship between the social media as a source of information and also the media, legacy media.
Right.
I think it's just that the legacy media is more trusted because we trust the verification process, the fact-finding process, the idea of sources, of course, then gives media more weight.
Okay.
And that's why I said the legacy media must be standard to be counted. It should give leadership. Yes. And the way, it's true, the way Eric is saying, honestly speaking, if you followed social media, then you think that this country would be on fire by right now. But the fact that it's not on fire is because legacy media has chosen to become responsible and to put social media on a short leash. For instance, you remember that time when we had the issue there by David Morade, he's the one who started all this issue. There's even a time on social media where they say that David Morade has been assassinated on Mombasa Road, on social media, isn't it? But everybody read it, but nobody exploded because they knew that legacy media, until legacy media says something about it, they can work on it. Let me also give another scenario why social media is not that very much trusted the people say about it. There was a time when somebody called Kofi Olomide was in this country when he had some drama at the airport. He actually did that thing in the morning. The thing was circulating all around on social media. But it's not until when legacy media picked it up, that's when government...
story.
However, the conversation actually and the pressure came on from social media, some would say, in terms of calling the authorities to attention. So the force and formidability of social media can't quite be ignored.
We cannot ignore it, but you see, people wait for
the legacy media
to confirm.
Now that
and the moment the legacy media picked it up and confirmed that footage, that's when government took action.
It's a good thing that you're talking about legacy media confirming one or two things as opposed to or in contrast to what is being circulated on social media. And you also mentioned one of the bloggers, Robert Talai, who has been seen by many as an alternative source of information. I mean, you can't say, bloggers are any less. They run within a space that has different rules, but they also have a following. And Robert Talai is one of them. And in fact, that's one of the stories that were headlining last week in terms of him being arrested alongside another particular warden, Patrick Safari, I believe is his name. And he will be in custody for the next couple of weeks. And this is as investigations continue in the charges that he's facing, having shared photos of the Wajir attack. 15th of June, there was an attack where officers were killed, and the photos that were shared, and I'm borrowing from a story by Abido Cheng, the photos that were shared actually was the reason why Alai was arrested. And this is just quoting one of the lines. Mr. Alai had posted pictures of officers who died in Wajir on Twitter, prompting a swift warning from police spokesperson Charles Owino, who said such acts will not be tolerated. Now, we asked a few people around the country what they felt about the forwarding and the sharing of these photos, because you and I get them on whether it's WhatsApp or whatever social media platform you prefer to use. You get them and even forward them as received from whatever background you are in. And we want to ask people what they feel about this, if they are okay with it or if it irks them, especially after attacks. Let's listen in.
One should consider a lot of parameters before you share a picture of an individual who is hurt or an individual who is going through. At least you should spend that moment to do something if you are at the scene. Or maybe if you've heard someone is injured, you may forward the information but not the particular picture itself. That's immoral.
When you are posting such pictures and the families don't know, you don't know who shall get that information and the reaction of the family members. So I would advise Kenyans, before they send such pictures, they should verify the origin of the pictures and whether the family members have that kind of information.
When you see a person doing that, people have been killed, he just goes there, takes a picture in the social media and starts sending. That person from the inside is rotten. The morals of that person are totally eroded.
Tuma picha kwa mtandao ni sehemu moja kutangaza mtu anaweza kuwa anamjua mtu huyu ni mzuri sana. Kwa maana ule mtu alikuwa hamjui atapata kumjua, huyu si fulani, huyu si mtu wangu, huwa ametangaza kwa kila mtu.
We have to verify kwanza hizi pictures zimetoka wapi before posting, before sharing with others. Huwa hatufurahi tukiangalia, hata sisi tunashtuka kwanza tukiona. Sasa what about the families wakiangalia, they get affected.
Kuhusu hizo bloody pictures, sometimes zinakuwa scary, sio watu wote wanapenda kuziona. So ukifungua ukienda online upate pictures kama hizo, zinakuanga terrifying sana.
Unaweza pata walikuwa hawajajua mtu wao amekufa. So unapata wengine kuna maugonjwa zingine kama blood pressure, nini vitu kama hizo, mtu unaweza kuwa umekosa mafazi nyingine, unaona? Ukireceive picture kama hizo, you are supposed first to confirm zimetoka wapi na ama ni real ama ni kitu tu mtu ameona tu aeka social media, unaona?
You cannot actually go on sharing pictures of dead persons, soldiers, police officers, simply because you want to be cool, simply because you want your pictures to trend. It's never good. It's never actually good. So we are really appealing to Kenyans to desist from doing such things unless it's verified from government. Let the government do it. Let the mainstream media do it, because they're the ones who will understand what they are supposed to be, is supposed to be done.
Watu wote ambao wako na WhatsApp wanapenda kusambaza picha kama hizo, sio mzuri kuweza kusambaza, manake itafanya hata mtu akuwa mgonjwa ama ashtuke. Mtu anaweza hota, na zaidi ya yote tunasema tuweze kutumia mtandao hii yetu ya social media vizuri.
No, you first ask the person where the photos came from, and if he's not going to answer you, then you have to delete the photos. You don't have to share on social media.
Pia kwangu mimi sioni kama kitu smart kusambaza, kwa sababu inaweza leta shida ama hata inaweza kufanya hata wewe mwenyewe ujipate kwa shida.
And those are the responses from around the country in different counties. And this is a reason. It's a story that has been a topical one over the past week and still is. In fact, when the ruling will be made after, I believe it's going to be 14 days. No, actually, that's probably not less than 14 days, because on the 20th, that's when they got the permission to hold him for 14 more days. So when that lapses, I believe that will be in July. That's when he will be back in court for the mention of this particular case. And yes, I just wanted to get quick reactions from the panel, but I will take a quick break on this at this point and get back to finalize on this. And we're back with the conversation, and this is not to talk about a lie or the pros and cons of the particular case, but because the same issue that has put him in custody is also regulating how traditional media, or legacy media as you're calling it here on the panel, is guided in terms of reporting, especially during the terrorist attacks. And this is actually anti-terrorism law that targets publishers of information, including media houses, publications, journalists, and bloggers. One person there in the Vox Pop said, we don't want it to be done on social media. Let the traditional media houses, or do it, like share this information. But this is not information that we can share, especially when it comes to such images, grim pictures, although we've been there. But that speaks to something in terms of they would trust it or take it better coming from the legacy media.
No, if you heard him first, he said, let the government do it if it wants to.
Yes.
And then, mainstream will pick from that. But then again, code of ethics doesn't allow.
Yes.
Basically, we are saying there are those gory pictures that shouldn't be put into the public. We are saying for children who are in traumatic situations, their faces shouldn't be shown. For people who are vulnerable, their faces shouldn't be shown, or even those images should not be put in public.
Yes.
Because like they say, there's an element of trauma. And trauma is not, just for those who faint and die. Trauma is for what children carry in their heads all their lives. It's like watching horror movies over and over.
Let me put this to you, and this is one of the colleagues, I'd call him, in the profession. He's currently studying in India, I believe. This is Leon Lidigu, and I believe we have interacted with him one way or another. And he said this, he said, I hope tonight we put aside the usual ethos of textbook journalism and ask, doesn't blurring images covering dead bodies, faces of subjects tamper with the emotional impact a story has to the viewer, if not determining degree of outrage?
You want to be emotional about people's deaths and put it in public? That's the question?
Well, he's talking about covering the particular real picture, because there's that argument as well.
Can I answer you that? Can I answer that question?
Yes,
and
yes,
you
sir.
said that we've been there before, and I think that's the explanation that was given by the editors who made those decisions.
Yes.
And I think the editor said that when he chose to use the Westgate picture, he wanted to pass a message that terrorism is here and is a very dangerous thing. So
Yes.
let us not play around with it. And I think that was Leon is talking about. It also happened when we had a story of Sinai, when again a newspaper decided to use the bodies in a newspaper. And I think the explanation was that for how many lives are we going to lose for Kenyans to wake up to the reality that when there is a fuel, please don't go and scoop it, because it happened only, I think, a few months after we had a similar case in Sechangwan.
Yes.
So I agree with him that some point, editors actually make that decision, that we have to make the decision for the purposes of driving point home, other than trying to hide some of these stories, so that we are able also to warn the public that these things are very dangerous, they are here, and we must deal with them.
Right.
But he's questioning the element of covering faces, blurring faces, for example, for children or who have undergone GBV,
dead bodies even,
dead
yes.
bodies. I mean, I think those things, even if we are there to tell a story, we are not there to traumatize people with those aspects. And of course, we have to, like the public says, there's a moral question.
Right.
The moral question, how do people perceive death in the light of pictures and in the light of them being able to see what's going on?
Right.
I think that's a question.
Mark, there's a reason why we are editors. And one of the most important work of an editor is to make decisions. And when you're making those decisions, this is what you have to have what we call a proportionality analysis. How do you send this message out very clearly? Point number one, first of all, I must say that the Vox Pop that you showed there is very biased. It's only people spinning one side, that people is going to traumatize.
Yes.
I have not seen the other side. And I can assure you that most of the people who spoke,
Most of them, yes.
In fact, all of them must have made that decision, spoken that way after they heard what Charles Owino, sports spokesman, said.
About allies pictures.
So they were actually simply
responding more to
they were just becoming echo chambers of what the spokesman said. But let's get back to history. When sometimes you want to make a call and ensure that to call the world to action. In 1994, the genocide in Rwanda was continuing for almost 100 days. People are being massacred. The international community did not know what was going on in Rwanda until CNN and other international media actually brought to us through television the mutilated bodies and the rotting bodies floating in River Kagera. In fact, I do remember, it was as a result of that, I think that time who was the US Secretary of State? I think it was who? I remember. That's when people asked, why is this? They even didn't know where Rwanda is on the map in the State Department. Is this true? Yes, these are human beings being butchered in Rwanda. That time he called, the State Department called a map of Africa, show us where Rwanda is. And action, it was during the Clinton administration, I think so, yeah. Action came as a result of that. And the media had to make a call. Whether it's traumatizing or not, they had to make that call. Now, this is what I have to say. The issue of traumatizing and what, we need to have an objective, it's supposed to be an objective test, not a subjective test. Who decides what to say, traumatizing? Yeah. For instance, if you publish those stories, those pictures, then you get a mortuary attendant or a pathologist. Will he be traumatized?
But
we have not seen the
population.
Yes, we have not seen.
But not all of us are coroners.
Not all of us are coroners, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you see, when you say that they are disturbing, according to who?
Then why have it in the code of
conduct? I know in some cases, sometimes when I know even if you read the code of conduct, actually it gives exception that when there is some special circumstances, you use them. And then number two, you also warn the public.
Exactly.
That,
The special circumstance here has been argued by some people is the terrible conditions in which officers are put under, and the way their bodies were being handled, and just some form of call to outrage at how our officers who protect our nation are treated.
And exactly, I think that was the message that was being sent across. I think the ally and the people who are probably sharing this picture, and I think the caption was that this is how we are treating our officers who actually spend most of their time protecting us, actually who put their lives on the line to protect us, but when they die, this is how they are treated. So basically that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it's all about the message that you want to send out. So if the people who are sharing those pictures, they knew that this thing is going on. Maybe it's something that has been going on for a very long time, but nobody's talking about it. So they said it probably is high time we started talking about all these things and put them out there for people to know.
Will this be one of those conditions that you, in the Code of Ethics, would provide for such?
But I don't think Allah is bound by our Code of Ethics.
Right.
He's not. Yes, he's online, he's free, he's a social influencer, and the way to regulate him is not even universal. There are no rules. Accountability online is a different thing. So for him, unless we're talking about now Nation or mainstream media making that call, then we'll have to do all those.
That's what I'm saying. If you were to put it in that context, leave alone Alai and other bloggers who share the pictures, because those people are not bound by the code of conduct, like she has said correctly. But what I'm saying, if you were now to put that in the context of the mainstream media, so there come at times when you need now to make those considerations. Do we need to use these pictures, and why do we need to use these pictures, and what are the circumstances? So once you are able to make those decisions, like Kulundu has said, then you decide whether you are going to use the pictures, and you must have a reason why you're going to use the pictures. Yes, there has to be a justification, not just a matter of using this picture the same way we use other pictures. But this one, there must be a justification why you have chosen to use these pictures.
Yes, and it clearly wasn't enough, because I'm sure many of our people within the newsrooms had access to that picture, but we couldn't use it. But the example given by Hassan Kulundu is with the Rwandan genocide is definitely something that was warranted or justified.
Yes, but it helped because I know it helped because, like I said, actually international community was called into action. They were able to know that there's a country called Rwanda. They were able to know there's a problem, and therefore they were able to stop something that had taken 100 days, and people were being massacred, people were being killed, and nobody was taking action because nobody wanted to air the story, or maybe it was a closed system. But so long as the action that has been taken to by the media, if it's able to yield some fruits, I think it's something that actually we're able to support.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Hassan, and then I'll ask.
Now, okay, I do agree. We see it's easier. It's easier. And this time, maybe sorry if I have to play the devil's advocate, and I may speak now as a lawyer.
Yes.
You must not forget that Robert Alai is now in custody or even if it's custody, maybe I think he's still fighting for bail. Okay.
Yes.
And look at the charges against him. He has been charged under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And I can assure you, there's a good reason why the prosecuting officials have chosen to charge him under that act. Because under that act, the sanctions are very punitive. Yeah. I can assure you, if he's convicted, the least years that a lie can get is 30 years. Because most of the sanctions, the penal sanctions under that act, 30 years and above. And above. Now, this is very serious. So we try to make what we call a professional analysis. What he did and the law under which he has been charged, does it warrant that kind of punishment? Right. That's why we have to be very concerned as journalists. In fact, we should not even be seeming to, we seem to be feeding a crocodile that is going to eat us ourselves. Yes. Under freedom of expression, and quite a number of jurisprudence and a lot of cases have been dealt with this issue of freedom of expression, because basically when it's happened to a lie, respect of the law under which has been charged on, this is an affront on freedom of expression. And the idea, when we start pontificating about this issue that is going to traumatize people, this is what amounts to self-censorship. And it puts what we call a chilling effect on freedom of expression. That an editor will have always to sit down and start asking, will this one offend anybody? Will this do this? So, and we have got jurisprudence on this issue. Yes. I remember during the CORD case when they did what? That was 2014. Miscellaneous security amendments. No, security amendments legislation. CORD at that particular time went to court and challenged the same kind of law, that particular law which had been brought under an omnibus, hidden under SLA. They challenged it because it's going to affect the media. CORD went and they won the case. I said that, in fact, I think it would not be just to do, isn't it? Say that we must expunge those provisions. Now, they were brought back again, quietly. And the issue is that the media is under threat, because there's nothing to stop somebody from making that decision and moving forward, now even to go for legacy media. Right now, I think because it's a lie, you see, independent, the way Koki is saying. Right. Next time it will be us. And you remember there was also Yasin Juma at one point. He was also held under the same. So as media, we should not be, we don't have to see, we are not supposed to be seen to be entertaining that what a lie is going through the correct way. The reason being this, it is very difficult to put criminal sanctions on how people feelings and whatever. And that law is very vague, vagueness of it. And I do remember one of the reasons that made Justice Mumbi Mbugugi to strike out Section 29 of KCA, Kenya Computer, at that particular time, it was because of the vagueness of the provision, because it's a criminal law with criminal sanctions, but it is not, it lacks specificity, which means that when you are framing the offensive action, it is left to either the prosecuting officers or the administrative officials to determine on their own what is offensive. And that's why the court struck out Section 29. So when you're dealing with criminal sanctions, a case where there's criminal sanctions, we have to be very careful that we do not allow such a law. We do not allow anybody who is under exercising freedom of expression to be charged under that particular law.
So are you concerned in terms of what it would bring to us? Of course, the follow-up story would be to interrogate the laws, because again, if he's put in there, we have limelight around why he's been put in, and it is maybe violating a constitutional right. I think the journalist or the media then needs to pursue that story so that it is clear where the boundary is. And the elements of vagueness, I agree, is important to be interrogated, because the vaguer the law is, the more people use it to their, what's their word?
The misuse.
The misuse, yes. Yeah, the other day there was a debate about, associations being checked out by, a media council. And there's that just one little, some sentence somewhere that doesn't say anything, but can be misconstrued. So I think the story, is that, okay, he has done something that is probably not morally accepted, like he said. But then again,
even if it's prescriptive in terms of legality, you know, how far will this, it's like that law is being tested to go beyond that, and that's what we need to be careful.
So my point is this, if somebody is offended with those kind of postings and that, let that person go to a civil court.
Yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
And demonstrate how he was offended, how he was traumatized, and if possible damages paid. But you cannot come and tell that my feelings, I was offended, then you want somebody to go to jail.
Yeah.
No.
Eric, you sound very calm as the Secretary General for Kenya Union of Journalists. Is there any concern for you in terms of how this would go?
I know this is something that actually the government has tried to sneak it in our laws, into our laws. That was 2014, when actually the law was very specific. That in the event there is a terror attack, the pictures that are going to be used by the media are actually supposed to go to the police, and the police were supposed to sanction the pictures that are going to be published by the media. But like Kulundu says, actually Justice Odunga found all these unconstitutional, and actually they were expunged from the law. So as we speak, probably the government is trying now to use the anti-terrorism law to deal with some of these cases. But again, as we speak right now, the charge against Alai was aiding terrorism. So we do not know how he aided the terrorism. So we are probably waiting to see, when the prosecution is arguing its case in court, how did Alai aid terrorism? So that is a matter that probably will play out in court. But as we speak right now, we know one of the reasons why the law was expunged was that it was going to interfere with the freedom of the media, because what they were trying to say was that once probably we've taken pictures and we brought them here at Nation, then we take them to probably Vigilance House, or we take them to Jogo House for vetting by police. Then the police will decide which is the newsworthy picture that is going to be used by the media. But again, our courts actually helped us in that. So as we speak right now, we do not believe that such a law can be used in Kenya right now, unless the court will now probably tell us now how did Alai aid terrorism as he has been charged.
Yes. Because if I may ask the question, at displaying bodies of victims or something like that, it's disturbing. Okay, in this country, how many times have we been treated to a picture of the first president, Jomo Kenyatta, his body lying in state? It has been published.
But that one is neat and tidy.
They talk about the decency of it.
So decency of it.
Yes.
So what is the degree of decency? What is it that? Because
you see the element of goriness. You know, like how gory is that picture? You know, to be depicted, and of course it will bring out that emotional element. And like he says, it will be very hard to prove how it affected you emotionally as a person.
And that's why Koki will say, that's how we say, when you want to make a law of that type, it should not be, it should be subject to what we call the objective test, not the subjective test. So when you put in, all these are subjective feelings.
Yes.
I'm not feeling this way, isn't it?
The public is giving you moralistic views, which is not wrong. They have a right to say, for me, this is not how the media should react.
Yes, that's one thing. But then there's a law in terms of if this particular case goes one way in terms of him being convicted.
I mean, we don't live in a
yes, we don't live in a vacuum. It can be revisited, but then it can be used as well.
Yes. But Mike, this is how I actually argued about such cases, is that these are professional issues. That's why, like I said, we have got code of conduct that actually guides us. And he said the code of conduct also gives us that opportunity to sometimes bend the law or the ethics, so that we are able to put across a point that actually is of public interest and also can help the public. So this is a debate that actually is supposed to be debated by professionals. Then we are able to agree as professionals, this is the routes we're supposed to take. But you cannot legislate it. If you legislate it, actually
that's what the problem is.
But the question
this is a matter that actually you're supposed now to test the maturity of a profession in a given country, where now professionals sit down and start doing peer review, you start debating this matter, then you are able to agree on what's the best way, how to address and how to approach such issues when they arise.
Yes. But in this circumstance, the person we are talking about is a social influencer. He is not a journalist.
No, we're not talking about
but it has ramifications to our profession.
But what you are saying,
later on.
of course, galvanized by what we believe in and what we will decide, then it protects the journalist. But more or less, the circumstance we are talking about is not a protected one. He doesn't have reporter's privilege.
To the question of how it played into, in terms of helping the terrorists, there is the argument that when we share these photos of the extent of damage and death and bloodshed, it shows it plays to the propaganda of the terrorist. It's in the theater of war, they call it. And that's what we should be avoiding. Whose message are we pushing forward? For instance, if it's in El Ade, how the extent of the damage, and there are limitations to what we can share. I mean, you could have some of the bloody pictures, but sharing that to the public, even if it's in the name of causing a shock effect and telling people our security officers are not in a good place or what have you, whatever message you're putting across, we still have those limitations.
Exactly.
No,
Let me say something about that,
yes.
just before it gets out of my mind. You see, we don't have what you call trial by ambush. What you have said is that if we do that, we are aiding or we are playing in the propaganda of terrorists. Nobody has given us the agenda of terrorists to know that this is what they have, so that if we do this, you are assisting them. So that person should give us the agenda. Then we should have got the agenda from the word go. We know that we can dot the I's and cross the. We have got a checklist. Yes. If you do this, you are aiding them. We don't have such a thing. Even the people who are saying it, they even don't know the agenda of the terrorists. Okay. If they know, then why, if they know the agenda, why have they taken all this time to deal with the terrorists? Yes. So we don't want to have what you call a chilling effect, that editorial independence now, now you have to censor yourself. This one, you start speculating. This one will assist will aid the terrorists. Yes. And that's the very reason why I'm saying that because of that, we cannot allow such a law, because basically what that law does, it leaves to administrative officials or even the prosecutors or the court to do some gap filling to imagine that this is the agenda of terrorists. Therefore, this act has aided terrorists. And I'm really waiting to see how that, what the charge is going to look like.
Yeah. Eric, real quick, and then...
Is this what I wanted to say? You know, there's a judge who once ruled in a defamation case, and the judge said that journalists are expected to act as professionals, and therefore their professional judgment is supposed to be accurate.
Yes.
So in a case like that, what I was saying, that we are putting in the context that we are assuming that this matter is within the media, where we are dealing with professionals. Then the professional will sit down and make judgment that is in the best interest of the country, the best interest of the viewers, the readers, and listeners already, and also in the best interest of the profession, so that by the end of the day, these pictures are able to communicate, because that is our way. That is our work, is to communicate. So we are able to make that judgment to make sure that the pictures we are using are actually communicating a message that helps. The message that is going to help the public and people who are reading the newspapers, people who are watching TV, and even those who are listening to radio. So what we are saying, what we have also advocated for is that even the bloggers, people who are operating outside the media, that is actually regulated by the law and the code of conduct, they need also to find a way how they are also going to regulate themselves.
Yes.
So that they are able to come up with their own rules that probably can help them, so that they don't find themselves in trouble with the authorities,
right.
like Ali has right now with the authorities, because that means that we know that the blogosphere is something that actually is not regulated. It's anarchy. No one is. There are no rules that these guys are playing under. But now that should bring now a debate. Should we have a self-regulation within those who are blogging, so that they're able to have some basics that they're supposed to observe? Even in the event that they want to use those pictures, there should be a justification why they want to circulate those pictures, and they're able, actually something that they're able to defend and able to take action in the event that someone actually violates the rules that they have come up with.
Yeah.
All right, but there's always an uproar when we talk about self-regulation or more regulation in any sphere, because that will come back to bite us as well as the media, as the mainstream media, because if you're asking for more regulation form of self-regulation for the social media, they'll ask us to have even stronger ones for the traditional media.
No, I don't think so.
The treatment and the expectation will be the same.
No.
Because we don't always get it right. Because this is an instance where we have one blogger who's gotten it wrong, perhaps in this case. This is what we're discussing. So it being a justification for greater self-regulation, there will always be an uproar. I'm just saying. I'm putting it out there.
Yes. The bottom line is professional ethics is professional ethics.
Yes.
That's why Eric is insisting professionals know what their ethical, how elastic their ethics are.
Yes.
And how. Look at doctors, look at lawyers. He will tell you that there is this particular route you must follow, and if you go against it, you lose your license. That's just how it is.
Yes.
Now, BEC, which I think is the Association of Bloggers, have really grappled with finding their space as social influencers, and they need to really sit down and say, first and foremost, to find out if all these other bloggers are members, get them to be members, get them to agree what will be their guiding principle, because they own a space that everybody respects.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Because look here, Mark, you are someone, for example, you've got 100,000 followers on Twitter. It means that whatever you do, whatever you say, is going to affect the lives of these 100,000 followers who are on Twitter, who believe in what you say.
Yes.
So in the event that you mislead them, it means that you look at the multiplier effect. It means that 100,000 times, probably another 100,000 of people you are actually likely to mislead with the information that you post on Twitter.
Right.
So that means that we need that kind of people who are responsible and people who are actually able to come up with the rules that do not take advantage of their readers and of their followers on social media.
Okay.
I wanted to say something about terrorism and media.
Yes.
There have been studies over the years about the relationship, CME's relationship. But that relationship between terrorism and media is at the point of the terrorist act. It's not after the fact. It is normally at that point in time, if the media takes its time to go there and tell, like what happened at Dusit the other day, you saw what happened with New York Times. That is when the relationship becomes impactful. But after the fact, really, I don't think that is something that we as media really will consider as abating terrorists.
Someone might argue the picture on Daily Nation that had the uproar of the lady who was crying was after the fact.
And that's why the big uproar.
Yeah,
But bottom line is, as the relationship between, or the studies show that the relationship between media and terrorism is at that point in time, because it amplifies the act as it is going on.
Okay. As we conclude, I want us to have conclusive remarks here. I'll ask the question, and it's not like it's the SI unit and international media when they share pictures. It's argued that when there's an attack on their land, they're very economical with the grotesque pictures of the effect and the bloodshed. Would that inform our practice? Not that they're best practice, but would that inform our practice? Is there something they're protecting in the name of the national, image or sovereignty of sorts that we also should be protecting?
I think if you have seen foreign media choosing not to post those particular kind of pictures, it's a local arrangement amongst them. There's no law about compelling them to do that. Second, because if you read the First Amendment, especially like in the US, it has got a lot of elasticity in that. So it's not, it's a local arrangement.
Yes.
Then people who say this, that their media, they don't publish, the US has got, the media is so expansive. Maybe us, we have only been acquainted with CNN and in fact, do you know the amount of newspapers and whatever we have in the US? Have we inspected all of them to find out to establish if such things don't exist? So that's a lame, it's quite a lame argument. It does not wash. Nonetheless, I'm not advocating. If personally, I also do. I will not encourage that because the reason is that, sincerely speaking, when we exercise responsibility, one of them we have to have caution. We must be assumed to know that there are some people who need protection.
Yes.
Like minors need protection from viewing certain things. That's the guiding principle. In fact, that's the only exception.
Yes.
But you cannot do that you cannot control or cannot enforce that responsibility with the criminal sanctions. That's my only opposition.
All right.
Nonetheless, beyond that, if the industry agrees the way Koki has said, and the way we in the legal profession, how we regulate one another, and it's very powerful. It's self-regulation, first and foremost.
Yes.
Then, on the same issue, where I would say, in case of such a thing, even if you read the Article 34 in the media, the Constitution on the media, it says that in case of such offensive publication, the first point of call is the Complaints Commission.
Yes.
So you must exhaust this. And in fact, it says that publisher, in fact, talks about doing in the book of publishing, should be subjected to criminal law sanctions. But you see, somebody has looked for a quiet and clearer way to bring this into the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Yes, yes.
We cannot go there. That's Ethiopia. That's what happens in Ethiopia. Kenya,
yes.
That is a wrong trajectory we are taking.
Something that we should be keen on and not just
very keen about it.
Yeah, but back, this is how I look at it. I'll say that we do not look at these issues selectively. Suppose we were talking about this story that the Wajir attack took place probably in developed countries. Is that how these countries were going to treat their soldiers and policemen? I don't think so. So, you know, those are some of the comparisons we're also supposed to be making, other than just saying that if this thing had taken place in developed countries, these bodies shouldn't have been shown.
Yeah.
But again, do you believe that this is how these countries were going to treat their heroes? I don't think so. So we also need to balance it. So that is why sometimes journalists or the media want to go out there and tell people this is how our heroes are being treated. Anyway, I would say that even going by the best practices, but every country has got its own circumstances that you're supposed to stick to, and that's why I say that for us here in Kenya, the most important is that we stick to the code of conduct. See if there are loopholes, we need to adjust so that we're able to address our circumstances. We cannot use the code of conduct, for example, that is used in Nordic countries that actually has have the best media regulation regimes, and want to impose it and think that it can work here in Kenya. Yes, it can't. It's us as Kenyans to make sure that we're able to have a regime that actually takes care of our circumstances and our environment according to the media the media is developing in Kenya.
Right. Koki, finally.
I mean, Africa is a context in itself, and Africans like telling stories from stories. Like every time we told a story, it would change, it would mutate. And therefore, like he says, we cannot just adopt things that have different mentalities. You know, mentalities of, you know, a lot of regulation. And no, we can't. We are Africans, and there's a way we look at perspectives.
Yes.
You know. Somebody was telling me the other day, somebody looked at him with bad eyes, and you know, those kind of things. Those are African.
Yes.
The omnipresent is there.
Yes.
So what we must do is to remember to fashion our journalism in a way that it is globally acceptable, but still speaks to our context.
To our context and our audiences.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to that. And this is something that speaks to audiences as well, as someone who contributes to Presspass a lot. And this is Macharia Gaido. He says, I could end with this conversation. He says, even if Robert Alai committed an ethical breach, it was not a criminal offense to warrant time in jail. He's being punished to cover up government mistreatment and neglect of security officers on or in conflict zones. Something that we would also want to look at objectively. And that's the truth there. The story is not about Robert Alai, but it is going to be used as an example as to what it would mean for the industry later on, depending on how this particular case continues. And just to wrap up with the international radar, the SABC, South Africa state-owned broadcaster, joins a queue of state-owned entities with begging bowls out of the National Treasury, with the SABC board saying that a communication blackout at the state broadcaster is imminent with its debt building insurmountability. The board chair told the Sunday Times that staff salaries may not be payable at the end of June. In addition to its immediate cash flow problems, SABC's other greatest challenge is that it has not had the funding to maintain any of its infrastructure. In publicly expressing the SABC's challenges, the board may be hoping to force the hand of the National Treasury, which has since March 2019 been considering an application from the broadcaster for a 3.2 billion shilling rand guarantee to enable it to raise funds from commercial banks. SABC had pledged in the South African Parliament that revenue would be increased by collecting more TV license fees, and advertising would be attracted by more strategic investment in the content. Broadcasting resources were to be pulled more effectively and spending reduced, but that seems not to have worked. The reason I'm reading this particular thing is just to show that the fortunes of media across the board, across the globe, are actually changing. Things are tough. Even here at the Nation Media Group, there are many rumors of changes, and yes, we're not peddling rumors, but the reality is the same everywhere. And there are changes given the times, the changing times, and these are the uncertain times that we all operate in, and it is something to face and not ignore. It's not necessarily that our standards have gone down, it's just changing times. And with that, I'll end Presspass tonight. Thank you to Koki Ochieng for her time. Thank you to Eric Odwor for his time, as well as Hassan Kulundu Sr. For making time for Presspass this evening. To the team that made this possible, my name is Mark Maasai. Good night.